afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me at iCAAD Insights today. My name is Araminta Johnson and I work with iCAAD. iCAAD is a platform dedicated to expanding knowledge, exchanging ideas, advancing well-being, as well as looking at the prevention and treatment of behavioural, mental and emotional health issues. We facilitate open dialogue and learning, and we do this through our communications network, which consists of online resources, including articles written by prominent professionals within the mental health and addictions fields, and videos such as this series of video interviews with our presenters of iCAAD London 2020, which will be taking place between the 4th and 6th of May later this year. You can find out more about iCAAD at www.icaad.com. iCAAD is spelled I-C-A-A-D. So today it gives me great pleasure to welcome Alice Bowen and Paul Lennon to the iCAAD Insights. Both Alice and Paul have worked closely with Professor Joanne Neal from King's College London on an app called Sure Recovery. Professor Neal will be joining us at iCAAD London to discuss the Sure app, and so I asked Alice and Paul if they'd come and have a chat with me beforehand so I could find out a bit more about its development and get a bit more of an understanding about the app. So thank you so much, Alice and Paul, for being here today.
You're welcome.
First of all, could you tell me how you both got involved with working on the Sure Recovery app?
Yeah, so I am a research assistant at King's. So I was hired by King's to work with Joe on the development of the app. So yeah, that's what I've been doing since I started about 1.5 years ago.
Okay.
So I'm actually somebody with lived experience of addictions, and Joe has been very keen always to involve people with lived experience in all the developments that she's been doing. So the app actually has been in development. Well, the measurements within the app have been in development for quite a long time, like a number of years, and that's all been done with the insight and kind of benefit of talking with people with lived experience to make sure that that view is captured within the measurements first of all, and then within the app itself.
Okay, brilliant. And so how was it developed then? If you could answer that, if you've been working on that, Alice.
Mm-hmm. So it's based on 2 patient-reported outcome measures, the first of which is called the Substance Use Recovery Evaluator, which is SURE, so that's why the app is called SURE Recovery, and the other is the Substance Use Sleep Scale. So these are 2 measures that were developed by Joe here at King's, and as Paul said, with people who are in recovery and using services. So the app is based on those measures. So Paul, I know you were involved in the actual development of those measures, which are both included in the app, and they were sort of the basis. So I don't know if you want to say about how they were developed.
Yeah, I'm sure Joe will talk about the development of those measures actually in much more detail when she speaks to the audience. But again, just to kind of reiterate, I guess, the involvement of people with lived experience. We have a group that meets regularly. It's called the Service User Research Group, and that's been something that Joe helped set up, and along with a project that I'm involved in, which is the Aurora project, which is a peer mentoring project for people in recovery or hoping to get into recovery. And so we meet at Aurora about 10 times a year, I guess. We've been meeting for a number of years since, I guess, 2012, 13. And almost right at the start, Joe was talking about Sure Recovery. So it was a measurement for recovery that was actually meaningful to people in recovery, and not just meaningful to, politicians or clinicians, but it was actually something that was kind of really meaningful. So it was actually a long journey in developing that measurement. And I like, as I said, Joe will talk much more about the nuts and bolts of it, but just to say that, we really appreciate someone like Joe coming along and really, taking the insight from people with lived experience. I think it's really important, and I'm sure she does as well.
Mm-hmm. And so how has the app, have you used the app then in its final stages? Paul?
Yes. And I think it's really, I wonder sometimes, like, if there's, like, I've been obviously involved in its development quite a lot. So I wonder sometimes if there's too much of me in it, but I don't think so at all. I think it's very much a combination of, everybody's views. And it's not just about, like, everybody's recovery journey is very different. So, like, I think that's really important to try and capture, actually. It's not always the easiest thing to do. It's quite complex in a way to capture somebody's recovery journey, and especially the differences within that. But we hope that with the app, and especially with the work that went into preparation for the app and preparation for the measurements, we really hope that we've got something that's really meaningful to service users. So I think, again, Joel will talk about the details, but I think that's been borne out by the reaction that she's had, and that I've had, and that Alice has had, I'm sure, from people that we've talked to in recovery.
So, yeah, I think as Paul said, we started with those measures, and then to develop after a while, those measures kind of got picked up and they were translated into quite a few languages. So SURE, I think, is now being translated into maybe 9 or 10 languages. And basically, the measures were used quite widely by clinicians and researchers, but people in recovery themselves said that they'd really like to have them in an app so that they could monitor their own recovery and their own sleep. And that's where the idea for the app came from. And then we got some funding from Action on Addiction, the Alexander Mosley Trust, and the Maudsley BRC, and that's when we started developing the app. So it was developed collaboratively with people in recovery, Mindwave Ventures, who are like a digital health tool developer, and then people at King's. So we started by interviewing people who were in recovery about their views about sort of what would be useful to have in the app, and then throughout the process, all the content was developed with people in recovery, and that's how it was developed, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm in recovery myself, and how would the app help me now in my recovery today?
I guess that's a kind of difficult question to answer, because it's your recovery. So it's not my recovery, it's your recovery. And I think the app just stands as a tool on its own to kind of, like, as a reference point almost for your recovery, somewhere to kind of dip in and out of as you go along that kind of recovery journey. And that's the way I feel about it. I feel that the way I've used it is it's like a reference point and something that I can dip into, or something I can make more of a commitment for if I'm kind of like, slipping a little bit or thinking about, going backwards in any way. So, like, it's something there that's kind of like, like an anchor a little bit of that recovery journey. And we have a diary feature in there, which I think is really useful as well. And it's something that was asked for quite a lot by the people with lived experience. And that allows you to kind of, like, have those kind of thoughts and write them down and kind of, like, look at them and kind of think about how you were thinking on that day, maybe when you felt quite low. So you've got another reference point, a bit like a journal, I guess, but, like, just contained within the iPhone or the whatever phone you're using, actually, the app itself. And I think that's really important, because you have, like, journals that you might keep in recovery, and it's lots of different bits everywhere. But I think that the idea behind technology kind of excites me. I know it doesn't excite everybody, but hopefully your audience will be a bit excited by it, I guess. But the ability to kind of have all of those documents in your pocket basically is such a great thing, I think.
Yeah, and I think as well as the diary, there's the main features of the app that might be helpful to someone. So there's the recovery tracker, which is the SURE measure. So you can complete that in the app, and then you can look at your scores over time. You can see them on a graph or in a list. And when you complete that, you get personalised feedback. So based on how you answer, which is sort of like recommending sort of support and things if needed, or encouragement. And then there's the sleep tracker, which uses the substance use sleep scale. And that works in exactly the same way. So you can complete that and then you'll get the feedback.
I think the reason for the sleep being involved as well was because of that feedback from services, which was well saying that, like, you know, sleep is something that I really struggle with in early recovery, and kind of like, you know, so it's important to try to kind of like, you know, look at that a little bit and try to understand it a bit more. And I hope that's another thing from the measurements that, you know, people in recovery can kind of dig around a little bit in the recovery, you know what I mean? And like, you know, it can be a very emotional time and everything else, but like, you know, obviously a measurement's not necessarily about emotions. It's much more about kind of the day-to-day kind of battles that you might fight with you know, money or whatever, different aspects of your life and relationships and things like that. But it allows you to kind of like, you know, explore them a little bit, I guess.
And the Shaw, you mentioned the Shaw before the sleep. You mentioned the Shaw sort of data capture. If it, I mean, I guess it's a kind of questionnaire, is it that you guys developed from experience talking to people? Okay. And how often do you go back in and do that questionnaire regularly, or is it a different thing every day? And is there a time limit on it, or how does that work?
So it's the last 7 days. Each question is asked about the last 7 days. So like, you know, have you used street drugs in the last 7 days? Have you felt the need to use street drugs in the last 7 days? And again, Joe will go into much more detail about what's actually in there. But for me personally, like I said, depending on my circumstances at the time, I might use it each week or every day, or I might use it, you know, just once a month, or like, you know, and I think that would be different for everybody then to kind of like make their own kind of schedule, I guess, on how often they want to use the actual measurement itself.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no necessarily prescribed sort of timings. I think it's just like as and when it would be useful to people.
And is there so you'll be capturing this data from which will that help research in the future? Will you be able to use that for future research?
Yeah. So when you sign up to the app, you can consent to take part in research or not. So anyone who doesn't want to share their data for research, it won't be recorded. But for people that do, then yeah, that will be used for research in the future. And our next sort of step is that we're going to do some research looking at how we can sort of improve the app. So based on the sort of opinions of people that actually used it. So we'll be doing some interviews and then also looking at the data and sort of seeing when people use it, how they use it, and yeah, so that it can be improved in the future.
Well, brilliant. It sounds really, really great. And where is it available for people to download now? From the iStore, from that?
Yeah, so it's on the App Store, the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. So yeah, people can download it. It's completely free, so yeah, you don't have to pay anything to use it.
And what about, you said that you get personalised feedback sort of thing for when you filled out your questionnaire for either the Shaw recovery part of it or the sleep recovery part of it. Will anything flag up? Will they say, you know, go and speak to, you know, your key worker or your whoever, if something, you know, red flags are sort of popping up all over the place?
Yeah, so I mean, the advice is sort of, yeah, if someone was saying, yes, I'm drinking at 7 days a week, then the advice would probably be, it sounds like you're drinking a bit too much at the moment. You might want to consider talking to your GP or your local drug and alcohol service. But yeah.
But there's nobody sitting there actually watching this data coming in, you know, it's just kind of generic. And again, Joel will talk about the mechanics of it, but it's kind of like, you know, depending on the score that you register as you complete the app. some feedback will pop up with that advice that Alice has just talked about. So, like, you know, maybe it's good to, and we've included links within that advice as well in there. So, like, you know, if cravings it comes up as an issue, there's a link to kind of pop into a page on the internet about cravings and what you might do to deal with that. And, you know, local services, I guess. I don't think we were able to do it with local services.
It doesn't give specific services now, just recommendations.
Because it's obviously used across the world, hopefully. So, you know, it's not necessarily iCAAD.
Well, exactly. And how will you, if this is the hope, the idea is that it's going to be used worldwide and that everyone who needs some sort of support in there, especially early recovery, but any during their journey of recovery, especially I think the sleep thing could be interesting for a lot of people to see, you know, how, because I think that's probably one of the indicators that you're perhaps not 100% okay in your emotional state if your sleep is being disturbed. It doesn't matter how many years in recovery you've got, you know. I think it's a good indicator just to say, okay, I better, I don't know, go to a meeting or go to, you know, voice my concerns or whatever it might be that you do. But how will you market this, the app across the world, really? Do you have plans to do that?
In terms of the dissemination of the app, we've been, I mean, I think conferences, talking to services, and then service user organisations have targeted quite a lot. It's basically just, I think, and also word of mouth. So it's just basically trying to tell as many people we can about it.
Like, I guess when you put it on a platform like the App Store, obviously it's available all around the world. Like, you know, so many people use that store and can download it. But, like, you know, you can kind of get a bit lost in thinking that that's going to be the outcome for what it is. And we really wanted to help people, first of all. I think that's the reason that we developed it. So we're concentrating as well on our local kind of area in London, especially, just to get the word out to as many services as possible. And then, of course, like, you know, other services around the UK, just to make sure that people, you know, actually get some you know, benefit from the thing. And it helps them in their recovery. So that's the most important thing, obviously.
Absolutely. And I think, what about, I guess, rehabs, when people are leaving treatment, it's just a good thing. I mean, I know when I left treatment, I was told to download I think it was the AA Toolkit app, which I think is available. And that's just sort of just track. And that's really simple. I think it's got some nice quotes. It's got some, you know, some meditations, maybe things like that, just to sort of keep always, as you say, a resource in your pocket that you can always just tap into, you know. And I think it would be nice to have an option, you know, when you leave rehab or when you are in your whether you're in rehab or not, whether you just go to your local drug and alcohol services, that they say, look, I mean, just try this app or this app or this app, you know. So the more people I think that can hear about this sort of thing is better and great. I think it's a really wonderful thing that you guys have done. So thanks so much for coming and talking to me. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our audience before we leave today?
I think, we haven't mentioned a couple of the other features of the app. So there's a harm reduction feature. So there's an naloxone feature in the app. So that has sort of emergency advice on what to do if someone has an opioid overdose. And it also has a training video and a competency tester, so people can sort of see if after using the resources in the app, they feel more confident about how to respond in that situation. And then there's also an artwork feature where people can share their artwork, and that's displayed within the app. So that people just send their artwork into us, and then we put it into the app, and it's shared with everyone using it. So they're just some additional features that I don't think we'd mentioned, as well as the recovery tracker, the sleep tracker, and the diary. I suppose that the audience is people who are looking for harm reduction advice or advice on abstinence. So it doesn't single out any particular group. It sort of has features that could be useful for different people at different stages. So
Brilliant. I mean, that artwork feature is really great and something I've never heard of before, I don't think, on another app. And I think it's just made me think, though, is there is there a way of, are you planning on creating a community? So like I say Paul sent in some artwork and I was like, wow, that artwork from Paul is great. Is there a chat feature or anything that I can sort of say that, give that feedback?
Sadly not. I think definitely that would have been absolutely great. And I think that was something that came up a lot during the development process, that sort of, making connections in the app would have been really great. But it's,
that might come in version 2.0.
Yeah, maybe in a later version. But no, unfortunately not in this feature. Yeah.
And was it the decision not to, I mean, I'm sure you don't have to say if it was financial or not, but was it maybe, is it a problem potentially for health and, not health and safety, but like a risk, thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's the sort of need for someone to constantly monitor that sort of side of the app.
Yeah, and you can imagine, like, I mean, I don't know, like, the way, Snapchat and all these other sort of social media platforms are used for selling and buying drugs now, as I've just been reading about that, and I didn't even know that was possible. In my time, certainly you can use any social media thing to buy drugs, but I suppose there's always a worry that if no one is not being monitored, then it could, that sort of thing could happen. But it is obviously the idea of community, and that's why the artwork is so great, is because you do see other people in the community. It is more interactive, when you are putting things, uploading things from other service users. And I think that's a really great feature of it, actually. Yeah, really cool. All right, well, thank you so much, guys. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you. And yes, so for everyone who's watched this, Professor Joanne Neal will be coming to iCAAD between the 4th and the 6th of May to discuss the Shore Recovery App in more detail, like elaborate on the development of it and the research that went into it and how it can help so many people in early recovery and in their recovery, on their recovery journey at any stage. So it's been really wonderful talking to you both. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, guys. That was great. Bye-bye.